Ever wondered if your advertising dollar is really working for you? If your ad would have been here, you and more than 4 million people would be listening to it right now. Contact ads at xzoneradiotv.com.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Mr. President, when you close your eyes, do you hear the echoes? Do you hear the cries from the front lines, burning far away to the flags on coffins at the break of day? They believed every word you said. Now their voices linger with the dead. Was it truth or a grand disguise? Another deal wrapped up in lies. Do the shadows speak when the lights go out? Do you ever feel even 1 ounce of doubt? How do you sleep at night with the world on fire and no end in sight? How do you close your eyes when the truth gets buried and the innocent cry? How do you sleep when the cost is paid in human lives? Tell me, Mr. President, how do you sleep at night?
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on the CanCom Broadcast Network. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV. And these are undoubtedly strange, weird, unpredictable times. I don't think psychics can even keep track of what's going on because everything changes from moment to moment to moment to moment to moment. And if anybody in the newspaper industry was looking for that all-important tag, because, you know, if it don't bleed, it don't lead. My Lord, there's never a shortage of lead stories these days. My guest this hour is EVERETT THEMER. He's a host, co-host of Extension 13, Political Dissonance, former host, news guy, and frequent guest on Spaced Out Radio, frequent guest on S4 Radio, guest on numerous podcasts and shows that have come and gone. Joining me now is EVERETT, and so one old radio guy to another old radio guy. Welcome to the X Zone, EVERETT.
Oh, thank you so much. It is an honor to be here.
How did you get into radio way back when?
I started out in high school, playing music and taking the business and marketing classes. And then after high school, I just kind of continued with that in college, and I worked in marketing, but I also had a recording studio that led me to producing commercials, which then led to just working at different radio stations, being involved in different productions, things like that. And it's just continued on for, longer than I'd like to admit.
You and I were talking before we went to air tonight about the good old days of radio. And you were talking about WGN, and, that is a famous station in Chicago, boosting out at 50,000 watts.
Yes.
And that's when radio was really radio. It reminds me of my days at CJBK, CKTB, CHSC, CKDX, and the list goes on and on and on. And there have been so many changes in the industries over the years. We went from reel to carts. Remember the cart decks? You'd work your buns off, going commercial song, news feed, to where everything now is digital. And a lot of the stations have gone from independent programming to satellite programming. It's lost its it's lost its familiarity with its audience.
I think it's lost its soul. I live in a rural area, but I can scan the dial and I can pick up maybe 6 or 7 FM stations, and 3 of them are playing the same feed.
Yeah.
It's, and it's not my particular type of music, but that's sad, because that is, local radio, whether it's a major market or even a smaller market, that used to be where people came to find out about things in their community, find out about things nationwide and worldwide by people they could see or knew in their area. And now it's empty. When I listen to a lot of the local radio, it just doesn't feel the same.
Yeah, radio used to be the lifeline of the community. Everybody was on there to listen to about the local news, the weather, local sports, and then local programming. And that's gone by the wayside. One of my favorite radio stations besides CFAJ here in St. Catharines, CHML in Hamilton, Ontario. And they closed the station down. And it was, I believe, well over 50 years. And because of the new way of doing radio and the cost of doing radio, the salaries of the personalities, it wasn't worthwhile.
It is what it is. And, you mentioned WGN, and for the longest time, now they've brought in syndicated programming, but to save money for the longest time from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m., where they used to have a overnight host who would host from, say, 2 to 6 in the morning, that 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. block, they just ran a cast of the live TV news.
Wow.
Yeah. And, it was odd to listen to because it wasn't catered to the radio. So you're hearing the sports guy talk about, look at this, look at that. The weather guy is pointing and saying this. It was an odd listening experience.
I would imagine so. And one of the reasons why the way that AM, FM radio stations are now run is because of the cost of commercials have come down so much thanks to the online advertisers. You can get advertising online is a lot more expensive than on-air advertising, but your audience, the reach is unbelievable.
The audience is so fractured now.
Yeah.
Regardless of what the media is, there are so many different options, whether it be podcast or streaming or TV or radio. There's so much that, the days of having a huge overnight, graveyard shift workers listening to the radio, they're all listening to podcasts and headphones now.
Yeah. That is so true. Where do you see radio in the next 10 years?
I see it morphing. I think it's savable. I think one of the things I think could save it is some of the quality podcasters beginning to syndicate their shows a little bit. Sort of cater them towards radio a little bit more than they can with like YouTube and things like that. And maybe put them out there on some of those smaller local stations. There are still a ton of these small local stations, and they're all looking for something low cost.
Right, exactly.
But if you can do a decent show, and nobody's in radio to get rich.
No.
But if you can do a decent show and you can provide that show to 5, 10, 15 smaller radio stations across the country, they can afford it with their commercial time prices.
Sure.
You make a little bit more than collecting a few pennies on YouTube. And I think that if things play out right, I think that's where it'll go.
You know, and proof of that is now Netflix is now carrying podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
So it is out there. Strange times. You know, like the audience is fractured because society is fractured. Look what's going on in the world today, and you and I have talked about it. You know, you've got... How do you describe what's going on? You know, like... All I can say is the world is going to hell in a handbasket thanks to Donald Trump.
I listen to Trump, and I don't understand how people can listen to him and not burst out laughing. Some of the things he says, you have to be a lunatic to believe.
You know, when was it? Yesterday, he was going to annihilate an entire civilization of 90 million people.
Yeah, isn't that something for the United States to be proud of?
Oh, really? Eh?
And sadly, a lot of these Republicans are proud of that.
Don't they realize that he's nuts? Like the man. How anybody can take him serious anymore is beyond me.
Half the country realizes he's nuts. The other half is the cult of Trump.
And what is it? Article 25 of your Constitution?
25th Amendment.
25th Amendment. J.D. Vance is never going to go for that. No one in his cabinet is going to go for that. So
and you know, I think that's part of the problem. There was a time when politics was service to the country.
Mm-hmm.
Now politics is a career. So if you're, you know, Marco Rubio or Pete Hegseth or any one of any number, senior senators or congressmen, it's not in your best interest to go against the party or the president and necessarily do what's right.
But I thought it was the people that mattered.
No. Well, you know, the people don't. Boy, it's tough to say that because on a local level,
right.
I live in Illinois where, and I'll be quite honest about this. In the local and state elections, I'm voting Republican. In the national elections, I'm voting Democratic. And that's because I look at the people and see what they have to say and what they bring to the table and their ideas. So many people are tied up in just being for the party. And that's what everything is for now. It's not about the people. It's for the party.
Everett, please stand by. You and I have to take our first break. Exonation. Everett THEMER is our special guest. His website, extension13.com, and that's extension, the number, 13.com. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell. You're listening to us on the CanCom Radio Broadcast Network, and we're being streamed on, well, we're being streamed on our good friends at Classic 1220 CFAJ right here in St. Catharines. www.classic1220.ca. We'll both be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
Or a grand disguise, another deal wrapped up in lies. Do the shadows speak when the lights go out? Do you ever feel even 1 ounce of doubt? How do you sleep at night with the world on fire and no end in sight? How do you close?
Well, that's got to say Humpty Trumpty took a fall. That's for... Well, you're an ability minute. I gotta win along and be in pizza. No, Humpty Trumpty took a fall. Oh, it's the only way to bury ya. Humpty Trumpty sat on a wall, pointing at maps like he owned them all. Said Greenland's big, it's white, it's cold. I'll buy the thing just like I'm told. He waved a check, he made a grin. Forgot to ask the people living in. Turns out nations aren't for sale, no matter how loud the fairy tale. Humpty Trumpty took a fall when Denmark said no deal at all. All the bluster, all the brag, slid downhill on an icy flag. Humpty Trumpty learned too late, you can't buy countries, checkmate. He huffed, he puffed, he threatened might, posted memes deep into the night, said I'll take it one way or another. World said, buddy, read the cover. Greenland laughed beneath the snow, NATO sighed and whispered no. Diplomacy's not monopoly, you don't pass go with ego fee. Trumpty took a fall from the tallest wall of all the tweets and tough guy talk cracked like ice beneath his walk. Humpty Trumpty hit the ground, ownership dreams officially drowned. No receipt, no refund, no empire built on frozen ground. Humpty Trumpty took a fall, the loudest flop the world recalls. Gold-plated dream, zero control, turns out you can't own the North Pole. Humpty Trumpty, lesson learned, maps aren't deeds, and ice gets burned. Humpty Trumpty left the wall, still claiming it was rigged and all, but Greenland stayed right where it stood, independent, free, and not for sale. Period.
Humpty Trumpty.
Period.
And welcome back. Everett THEMER is our special guest. His website is extension13.com. When it comes to the paranormal, are you a believer or are you a skeptic?
I'm a skeptic, but I believe. I'm skeptical of the way we interpret things, the way we search for things, and how we use the data. But there are definitely a lot of things out there that happen that we don't understand.
How about conspiracies? Are you a believer in conspiracies?
I believe there's enough out there that they exist.
On your show, Extension 13, what do you guys talk about?
We talk about everything from, UFOs and ghosts to conspiracies, but we also we try to bring in some pop culture and some music. I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of different music people, and we'll bring them in. I've had the opportunity to bring in some horror TV hosts, some pop culture people, things like that. Kind of, I grew up on the Wally Phillips morning show on WGN, where you could shift gears and go from, a cooking segment on the radio because it's ridiculous to having to deal with a serious topic to then having somebody who's a musician on there. And we kind of try to recreate that.
So variety is the spice of life.
Yeah. And I came from a radio show where we would do 3 hours with one guest and do a deep dive. And for a while, that was fun. But when you look at some of these topics, it's hard to talk to the same person for 3 hours about them. When you look at the UFO situation here, the last 8 years, there's been a lot of talk, but very little has happened or changed.
Exactly. Even the congressional hearings were boring.
Yeah. I was talking to a UFO historian the other day, and we were talking about like the credible mass sightings or things that really stuck out. And as far as we can figure, the last one was 2006 O'Hare incident.
Yeah.
So we're going on 20 years now where there's nothing that's really developed.
It seems that the UFO craze started to slide when everyone had a phone, a high definition camera in their cell phone, and where there used to be these grainy photos that were taken before that raised a question. With the high definition cameras, it's next to nothing that has been brought forward, whether it's UFOs, ghosts, or even Bigfoot.
And, with having all of those cameras out, you would think that we would have more mass sightings.
You would think so, yeah.
If you look back in the 50s and 60s, some of those UFO flaps where you would have 5, 10, 15, 20 people, and a lot of them would be police officers and credible people witnessing these things. Now, they didn't have cell phone cameras back then or generally even cameras with them, but you had a lot of these sightings where credible people, multiple credible people, were seeing them. Today, we're not getting that.
I think it's because today these UFOs can be identified. and that what was unknown at the time, or for the sake of national security, was suppressed, that the cover of the mystery was allowed to proceed. Whereas today, people take a picture and they just feed it into their computer, and the computer does the search and identifies it for you.
And the other thing with that, though, too, is with, the onset of AI and everybody having Photoshop and things like that. I mean, when I was in high school and college, using Photoshop was a big deal. Not everybody had it. You had to be kind of specially trained on it, and you had to know what you were doing. Today, everybody can take a picture of their backyard and in 20 seconds add a reasonable image of a UFO somewhere on it.
Easily. Just like with CGI. The impossible is made possible these days.
And as a skeptic, and again, I was talking to a UFO historian about this. As a skeptic, what is the evidence anymore? We can't, and nobody can truly trust video. If you see something on Facebook or you see something on Twitter, you have to vet it and find multiple sources and other people talking about it. Not just your own little echo chamber of UFO Twitter or something like that, but other people who maybe aren't connected, because there's so much out there and everybody is putting stuff out there that, like I said, as a skeptic, it's difficult to even look at video anymore.
It truly is. And even the cases that were believed to be rock solid, I'm talking about Roswell, there's so much doubt about that, even by the people who really believed in it, wrote books about it. And now they're saying, well, on second thought, looking at the evidence, what evidence is there? Hearsay.
I tend to think that something happened at Roswell.
Oh, I agree.
But I think that too many people have tried to insert themselves into the story over the years. And in some ways, I think it's been talked to death. Yeah. I mean, everybody who writes a book on UFOs, either their first book is about Roswell or they include a chapter on Roswell. Roswell is a great primer for somebody new to the UFO topic.
I think that there are way too many armchair researchers out there. Instead of getting out, pounding the ground, going to the places, speaking to the people, they just do internet research and publish a book.
Yeah, you can literally do a book in a couple of hours with AI now.
Easily, yeah.
But you talk about people boots on the ground. That brings me to another issue with the UFO and paranormal in general. What do people do with their evidence? They collect it.
Yeah.
And then what?
They all hope that they have the smoking gun so they can make the millions of dollars doing a TV series, which is sadly the furthest thing from the truth. I was speaking to Nicole Strickland earlier today, just before you came on with us, and I was telling her that a good friend of mine, Larry Lawson, who is the founder of the Florida Bureau of Paranormal Investigation, he's a former police detective in Fellsmere, he wanted to create a standard for paranormal groups, and he also wanted to have a database, much like NCIC, where groups could put their evidence, their findings, their reports in this database that could be shared with other members of the paranormal community. Nobody wanted to participate because they're all hoping that they have the smoking gun. And Larry would explain that this is how law enforcement works. You share the information, you compare your notes, and you put a case together and solve it. But no, everybody's so interested in doing everything on their own. And I think that this is one of the biggest drawbacks when it comes to the paranormal.
And I would agree. I've had the discussion quite a bit with a lot of people regarding the scientific method and ghost hunting.
Right.
Well, you can say you're applying the scientific method, but a lot of the tools we use or they use, we don't know that they're actually appropriate for what they're trying to do.
Exactly.
And you mentioned the UFO database type of idea. When's the last time we've had a UFO case with physical evidence?
Well, it depends on who you ask. You know, I can't recall any. I think the only one that really had any physical evidence that was spoiled was Roswell, the stuff that was retrieved from the Brazil Ranch.
Yeah, I would say that there were probably a few in the 50s and 60s where there were some things that they had found. And you have the depression type things on the ground, you know,
Yeah.
holes and things like that. Maybe that was going into kind of the 80s. But, you know, since the 90s, we don't seem to even have cases that have true physical evidence.
Just like the alien abduction cases. When's the last time you heard about somebody being abducted by aliens? And I don't mean the Mexicans. I mean the ones from outer space.
Yeah, those are the important aliens.
Right.
I don't know. It seems to have kind of dropped off. But does that lead into the idea of all of these sort of fields within the paranormal kind of combining? Because it used to be that, you know, ghosts were ghosts and UFOs were UFOs and time travel was time travel. Mm-hmm. Now I would say probably since December 2017, the idea has been brewing that all these things are combined.
Yeah. Exactly. You know, I've had people on the show, and I'm sure you have, where they've seen a UFO and then they have Bigfoot walking out of the UFO. Like,
yeah.
It's too sensational. Like, how come all of a sudden you've got Chewbacca coming out of a UFO? Is it because of the influence of Hollywood onto the New Age culture?
It could be. Or is it somebody just trying to find another way to explain it so that they can promote themselves or the idea?
Stand by, my friend. You and I have to take our break. Exonation, Everett THEMER, right? THEMER is our very special guest this hour. Extension13.com is the website. And we'll be back on the other side of this break. Whatever you do, don't go away.
Just like I'm told, he waved a check, he made a grin, forgot to ask the people living in. Turns out nations aren't for sale, no matter how loud the fairy tale. Oh, Humpty Trumpty took a fall when Denmark said no deal at all. All the bluster, all the brag slid down.
Well, I just got back from Roswell, where the aliens have been. And if you ask the feds the cause, well, they'll only lie again. Now I'm hunted by the gumshoes, and I'm wanted by the cops, 'cause they think that I might be the guy making circles in the crops. And I know that there's a conspiracy from the voices in my head. Elvis lives, that's clear to me. It's McCartney who is dead. And if the Mars men should come again and take me, I will go. I will take a trip on their rocket ship. God bless the UFO. Give JFK this message. It's the Cuban Army's fault. And I know that Dave Koresh is alive inside a vault. We've seen reports in papers of a guy who knows about a car that runs on chewing gum, but the Arabs rubbed him out. And we loudly warn that America is badly unprepared. With the Cold War through, we need something new that can get you good and scared. Do you wonder just who is warning you of conspiracies today? We're the ones who fill the rumor mill. We are the CIA.
And welcome back, everyone. Everett THEMER is our special guest of this hour. Extension 13.com is his website, extension 13.com. We were talking about UFOs and other aspects of the paranormal. And you would think that there'd be more stories out there with more and more people looking towards the skies. We've talked at length and exhaustive on Fire in the Sky with Travis Walton and Mike Rogers, the Betty and Barney Hill case, another abduction case. Then I've had guests on the show who say that they've been abducted. They've gone to other planets. They've married aliens. They have alien babies, and the stories go on and on and on. But when it comes to the proof of anything, nobody has it.
Exactly. And, it's funny how in the 50s, everybody said that they met the Venusians. They were coming from Venus.
Yep.
And I believe, in the early 70s in grade school, I was taught that Venus was our twin planet. And they talked like, the teachers spoke like it was okay. It was normal that there's probably a rainforest on that planet. But then as we learned about the environment of the planet a little bit more, all of a sudden, nobody's coming from Venus because now we know it's uninhabitable.
Right.
I mean, there's a famous clip that goes or makes its way on the rounds of a gentleman speaking, and he talks about they came from Venus to speak to him. It's from an old clip from probably the early 60s, and that was the common thing. But now nobody comes from Venus.
No, George Adamski and his crew were well known for that. Nobody comes from anywhere. I can't understand why, if they are out there, the government, if there is a conspiracy, just doesn't come clean.
But if they came clean, wouldn't most of the UFO people just say they're still hiding something or they're not telling the truth?
If that's the case, it's not the government who is perpetrating the conspiracy. It is the UFO community that is maintaining the conspiracy because, like you said, if the conspiracy was to be revealed, then they'd have nothing to talk about.
And that's a good point. I mean, they kind of, the UFO community now is made up of so many, I don't know if you want to call them UFO celebrities, UFO personalities, but it has gone from a study, a science type of hobby to a show, a performance.
Exactly.
That's the goal of so many of these people. And I liked Nick Pope, and it's unfortunate that he passed away so quickly.
Exactly, yeah.
But even he fell victim to sort of the UFO celebrity gimmick there. When he first came around, some of his interviews were very interesting, very informative. And then, ancient aliens and the speaking engagements and things like that. And his story shifted. And, he made some of those interesting comments like the birds are the aliens, or seagulls are the aliens, and they're spying on us. There were some things that kind of showed that he was falling into that trap of what can I say now?
Sensationalism.
To get me on that next conference.
Well, I did have a gentleman on the show who told me that it was the owls who were the aliens, and they took on the appearance of an owl as not to raise suspicion, and they've been watching us for so long.
Well, they have those big eyes and they creep around all night.
Exactly. Plus, they can see in the dark.
Yeah.
Do you really think that there is a government conspiracy when it comes to extraterrestrials?
I think the government knows more than they're saying. but I also lean towards that means that maybe they have some radar hits, some pictures that we don't have access to. I lean away from the idea that they have a garage under a military base full of UFOs and aliens that are working to fix them. But I do believe they have some information, and I do believe something's going on in our skies.
Is it our military with advanced equipment, advanced technology? Or is it actually visitors from another planet? And why would anybody want to come here in the first place? We're such a screwed up planet. Can you imagine first contact being with Donald Trump?
Oh boy, that would hurt.
You know, or how about Pete Hegseth?
Pete Hegseth is what you become when you grow up on nu metal and Red Bull.
I swear to God, well, I used to swear to God that on the backside of the moon was a big billboard that said, "Earth ahead, turn back now."
You might not be wrong.
Well, we'll soon see when they expose the photos that they took of the backside of the moon. So
you don't think that they'll paint that over? You know, do a little airbrushing on those,
like they did with the face on Mars.
You know, that face on Mars was fun in the 70s and 80s, but as cameras got better, yeah. I think it's time to put that one to rest.
There's so much that should be put to rest, except as the new generation starts, going into the UFO phenomenon, the old stuff is revived. Crop circles. When's the last time you heard about a crop circle? They were thought to be communications from extraterrestrials.
I don't see why they would use crop circles. I don't understand it. If they can fly, and we've had these kinds of discussions ad nauseum, that if they can fly from distant galaxies to here, they don't need to carve or flatten out some grass or corn or wheat to send us a message.
Exactly.
If they're gonna come all this way, they have a purpose.
Well, the same argument could be used for lights in the sky at night. Like, if they are that intelligent, why, and they knew that these lights would attract attention, why would they keep lights on?
Well, the conspiracy theorist is going to say they're trying to leave signals. They're trying to slowly reveal things, because if humanity knew, society would collapse.
Yeah, I've heard that story, and I've also heard the same thing when it comes to the religious aspect, that the ETs would cause religion to cease and desist because it would be revealed that the Bible was wrong and other religious philosophical books were wrong about creation. What's the matter? Don't they think we really could handle the truth if the truth was out there?
Yeah, exactly. And, you talk about the lights in the sky. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, the UFO community really dropped the ball with these drones that we experienced a year and a half ago or so.
Oh, in New Jersey, right.
Yeah, well, in New Jersey, several states, there were sightings here. The government just said, "Oh, yeah, don't pay attention to that. They're just, contractors," or they gave a couple of different explanations. Mm-hmm. None of them particularly satisfied. The UFO Twitter crowd that will argue over whether it's a gray or a green alien for hours just accepted everything that they said and let it go. And I don't know if they are alien or terrestrial. I lean towards terrestrial, but it's one of those things that it was worthy of pursuing and looking into and expecting some answers.
None were given. There was no. Hollywood, I believe, has to take a lot of the blame for what we are led to believe UFOs. You know, Close Encounters. That was a great movie. Then what was the other one? E.T. And then, of course, with the X-Files coming on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great time, and it opened up the questions and the possibilities of what is out there. Unfortunately, we're still there. We still don't know, and yet we should know.
Yeah. We haven't moved forward on the UFO topic really in 30 years.
At least.
Maybe more.
Yeah.
I mean, we could argue about December 2017. And at the time, everybody said that was going to be, you know, a great revolution in UFOs. And then it was disclosure is coming in 2019 and then 2020. And now I hear it's going to come in 2027.
Well, in fact, I had a gentleman on the show last week who said that the ETs are going to make their grand appearance on June the 24th of this year. Who knows?
Well, we'll see. Huh?
One of these days, somebody's going to be correct. You and I have to take our final break, my friend. Exonation, Everett THEMER is our special guest. His website is extension13.com. That's extension13.com. And we'll be wrapping up this hour here in the X Zone as we continue on the CanCom Broadcast Network, streaming us on classic1220.ca.
Hey, open the UFO files. Let's see what's there. Flying saucers, aliens, or just hot air. Every blurry light at 2 a.m. turns into a spaceship for them. Open the UFO files. Read every page. Area 50 fun or a storage cage. Turns out most things in the sky are satellites or some guy's drone flying by.
In the bitter Minneapolis cold, where snow and winter meet, Alex Pretty walked with open hands to stand beside the weak. A nurse who spent his life to help care for those in need. Not a soldier, not a threat, just trying to do good deeds. They called him names, they made their claims before the truth was known. But when the camera's on his side, Alex Pretty held a phone. He held a phone, not a gun, and just with every breath he drew, he meant to help, to calm the fear, not start a fight he never knew. They shot him down in daylight's glare, and now the streets won't rest. For Alex Pretty's life was lost, and justice stands the test.
Everett THEMER is our special guest. www.extension13.com. That's extension13.com. Everett, thanks very much for coming on the show. I've thoroughly enjoyed our hour together, which is up in about another 14 minutes. You and I are old radio guys.
Yeah.
I get people coming on the show who talk about EVPs. And I cannot make heads or tails about how an EVP works. Any ideas?
I get the concept. Working as an engineer, I get the concept, but I'm not sure if the physics of it can really work. I mean, the idea of taking that voice and turning it into an electronic magnetic force that can impregnate itself onto a tape.
Yeah.
And, you know, the digital aspect of it confuses me even more, because it's really, then it has to basically invade a computer. You know, even the little digital recorders have a little computer in there to process the signal. So it's a little confusing. But I will say that, when you go back to like the 60s and the 70s and you listen to some of those old EVPs that people catch on the little portable reel-to-reel or the portable cassette players, some of those are really interesting. I just don't know, either it's absolutely true or it's absolutely false. And some of them sound like they're real.
Any theories?
No, other than somehow there's an aspect of physics that we don't understand, that a disembodied voice can be converted into some form of electromagnetic energy. And I guess that's not that far out of the realm where it could be, put on a tape. I guess with that's kind of where I stand on that.
In your opinion, what is the most valid part of the paranormal that, in your opinion, has had plausible proof that it really does exist?
Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of heat for this, but I know a lot of people don't like the ghost boxes or spirit boxes, and I know that they're open to a lot of interpretation, but I have had a lot of opportunities to listen to ghost box sessions with Bill Hauser, and he is phenomenal with those things. And I have heard them drop the F-bomb. I have heard them, he turns it on, they say, "Hi, Bill." Not just one person, sort of indistinctly, but several times clearly. I don't know if it's the absolute holy grail, but it's something that, as a skeptic, I'm interested in, because I'm not just out to, rain on everybody's parade. If there's something there, I want to look into it and see it. And I think that's, in my opinion right now, that's where I'm the most interested in finding some answers.
My producer was just chatting in my ear saying that another thing that seems to have disappeared are these holy apparitions. Sightings of the Virgin Mary, sightings of Jesus, like the Lady of Fatima. They don't seem to happen anymore. We don't hear about spontaneous combustion anymore.
I was just talking with my wife about that. She asked, she's like, "When's the last time you heard a case of spontaneous human combustion?"
Yeah.
And I can't recall, other than seeing them, seeing shows about probably the most, at most 5 most famous cases of it. It just doesn't happen anymore. And as a skeptic, I tend to wonder why. What changed that made the phenomena change or disappear?
And there are certainly more than one phenomena that seems to have come and gone. And then if we want to get into the cryptids, you've got, of course, Bigfoot, the Patterson-Gimlin film. You've got Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster, Champ, the lake monster of Lake Champlain, the Mothman prophecies, and the list goes on and on and on.
I think the cryptids is the one area that is really taking off and growing.
But once again, everybody's got a camera in their cell phone, and yet no proof of the Bigfoot, no scat of a Bigfoot, no cadaver of a Bigfoot. The recordings I've heard of the stick wax, that's when apparently Bigfoot takes a stick and hits a tree to communicate with you. I still haven't seen or heard anything from anyone that gives credence to Bigfoot's existence.
Well, are you familiar with the Chicago Mothman phenomena of, let's say, 7-8 years ago?
No.
Okay, there was the idea that there was a Chicago Mothman flying around, and dozens and dozens and dozens of reports were popping up. and they were compiled, and I won't mention who or how, because
Okay.
I have some I you know what, I don't know if you're familiar with Lon Strickler.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah, it was he had an interactive map, and one of the cases turned out to be in a town called Woodstock, Illinois.
Okay.
It was my hometown for 20 years.
Wow.
And I went and I talked to some people, and I just don't believe the case. They made a police report. I think that the idea of, in this case, the Chicago Mothman, so many people were talking about these few reports that it just ballooned into, oh, I saw a shadow over there. That's a Mothman. And now I live in the woods. I have a long driveway, and we have owls. You mentioned owls earlier.
Yes.
There are times where I will pull in the driveway at 2, 3 in the morning, and going down the driveway, I will have an owl drop in front of the car from the trees. And if I wasn't expecting it to be an owl, if I didn't know they were there, I could convince myself that I saw some sort of flying humanoid.
Years ago, I was on a friend of mine's radio show in Toronto, Andrew Crystal, and we decided to do an experiment. And after the segment I was on, I went outside on the corner of Queen Street and Yonge, Queen and Yonge, and I just stood on the corner and I looked up. I didn't say a word. I just stood on the corner, looked up. People passing by would stop and look up, and they'd see nothing, they'd go. And then you had the odd person who would stop and look and stand with me. The next thing I know, I've got about 30 or 40 people around me looking up, and they can all see what I was looking at, and I was looking at absolutely nothing.
It's a study in sociology and psychology, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is.
And that's who I think needs to get more involved in these topics, is anthropologists, sociologists, psychologists, not to downplay anybody's experience.
Of course not.
But to understand it on a societal level.
Yeah. Just like it was discovered that a lot of these haunted homes, which were old homes, were actually causing the people who were having the experience was due to black mold spores.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, the true believers will not accept the scientific finding that it was black mold spores that were causing the paranormal event that they were participating in, because it's a matter of belief.
It is, but on the other side of that spectrum, you have so many people who label themselves a skeptic that will just dismiss anything.
Yeah.
And while we don't have any current evidence to the public on UFOs, I think that there is some value in the experiences. I'm not saying that because somebody has an experience and then they write a book and go on the conference circuit that their experience is accurate or true or even happened. But I think when you look at the collective of them, there's value there.
Certainly. People say, Rob, why do you do your show? You know, you're always kind of being like a skeptical. You want evidence, and you're always challenging. Well, it's a simple answer. I want the truth. I want the proof that all this exists. I want to believe, but I want the proof. I'm just like that little old lady in the Wendy's commercial. Where's the beef? Remember that?
Yes. And I want to believe too, but you can't believe. There has to be some evidence. There has to be something provided.
Exactly. You and I must say so long for tonight, my friend. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. Great pleasure. We're going to have to do this again.
Thank you so much for having me, and anytime you want.
All right. Take care of yourself. And once again, if you'd like to find out more about my guest, EVERETT THEMER, visit his website, extension13.com. That's extension number 13.com. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue with a number of affiliates. If you're not one of the affiliates that continues with us after this break, always remember to keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. I'm Rob McConnell. Don't go away.
Just hot air. Every blurry light at 2 a.m. turns into a spaceship for them. Open the UFO files, read every page, Area 51 or a storage cage. Turns out most things in the sky are satellites or some guy's drone flying by. Yeah. Let's talk got folks all loud. Internet instantly lost the crowd. One guy yelling, they walk among us. Neighbors sue buying alien fungus. Scientists, science, coffee in hand. Universe big, please understand.